And the activities involved with planning are business planning, writing your business plan or setting your business course and strategy, and then sales and operating planning, or sales and operation plan. And that's where you try to match up the capabilities of your company with the anticipated market forecast. And we end up identifying our goals, again, setting a market forecast and estimating the needed resources. Finally, after planning, we get into preparation, which deals with master planning, setting a production schedule up over the course of a year, and then also purchasing, getting those materials we need to execute the plan. This is, again, looking at almost a year. And it depends on the industry you're in as well. Finally, after we've done all that, then we get to the execution phase. Then we get to production activity control, actually producing our product and delivering to the customer. And we're looking out maybe 0 to 6 months, maybe weeks or days at a time for this. But notice the focus is on the first two, because the better you plan and prepare for the execution of your strategy, the better you'll be able to manage by exception or have things work according to plan in the actual execution stage. A lot of people think that supply chain management is just concentrating on that third part. But again, if they're just doing that, they are going to react to circumstances. They're not planning or managing. So again, in the interest of time, I'm going to just highlight a couple areas. One of the biggest things that we're dealing with today is changes in purchasing, and some of the previous speakers mentioned this as well. That we're no longer just trying to go for the best price. We're looking globally, and we're trying to invest in certain countries. And these are some of the things that purchasing managers and purchasing personnel have to do. They have to balance the cost of having inventory with not having inventory. They negotiate contracts with suppliers. They coordinate schedules with suppliers, ensure the timely, accurate arrival of goods, and essentially make sure that everything is ready for the execution of the plan, of the production plan. And McKinsey Consulting Group just did a study that said about 50 to 80% of most manufactured goods, the costs associated with that are from purchased material. And this is especially true as companies outsource more of the work. So many companies, rather than doing a one-time pressing on their suppliers for price reductions, are working with their suppliers, and this is particularly true in the automotive and aerospace industry. They're working with their suppliers because they're realizing you can only beat your suppliers so much, and then you can't get anything more out of them. If you work with them and communicate with them, you can accomplish a lot more. This is a slide on relative purchasing costs. They've grown from under 50% to more than 80%, especially as automation has kicked in. Now, purchasing, again, I have a brief story to tell you about purchasing and some of the risks with that. Ford Motor Company just recently took a write-off of $1 billion US. And what was happening was they had commodity purchasers who buy steel, who buy tin, who buy plastics, were also buying something called palladium, which is used in catalytic converters, which are required in the United States. Now this is a precious metal, and it's very expensive. So they were buying large quantities to try to get the best price. Normally when you buy precious metals, you hedge because, like gold, the prices fluctuate, so you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of risk. Well, this is an example of what can happen if you don't pay enough attention to purchasing. So from purchasing, one of the effects that purchasing has is almost directly is on your inventory levels and how much inventory levels are kept. So again, when it says here, the only reason to hold inventory is that it costs less to do so than not to do so. There's a lot of expenses associated with that, storage, damage, obsolescence. Of course, if you don't have enough, you can miss deliveries, lose sales, you have a lot of angry customers, so you want to be very careful with that. A a lot of companies are putting more focus on managing their inventories because what they found is that inventory has a direct negative effect on cash flow. Remember, you don't get paid until a customer gets a good. So you can bill as much as you want, but you're not going to get any money coming into you until you actually sell it to a customer. So with that in mind, these are three large consumers of textiles. They've each reduced their average consumption or their average inventory levels by 8% a year, and they're still doing that. And Alan Questrom, the chairman and CEO of JCPenney, said that improvements in inventory productivity were the most important contributor to free cash flow. So, information systems, this is, the only thing I'm going to say about information systems is it provides a way to communicate between customers and suppliers to better coordinate the supply chain and drive waste out of that. It won't fix a dysfunctional process. If you have a bad process in your supply chain, this will just speed it up and make it much, much worse. In Thailand, there's a large base of textile and garment companies, over 1,800 textile companies, and more than 2,600 garment companies. Even with that, even with the value of exports of 5.3 billion, about 80% of the fabric used in Thailand for garment manufacturing is imported, most of that from Taiwan. And there's several reasons for that. The biggest thing is that their technology and their quality is not quite up to par, and they're working to move that way. And they're trying to realize the advantages of supply chain, of having a close supplier to them to better, more tightly coordinate deliveries. So what we're trying to do right now is set up a pilot program to help them with this and providing a quick response, quick delivery system to some large apparel, sports apparel companies such as Nike or Adidas. It's still in the early stages, so nothing has been set yet, but that's where we're trying to go. So let me just wrap it up by talking about the future of textile supply chain management. Textile and garment companies have to become more flexible, deliver better quality, and the big thing is drastically reduce lead times. Be able to deliver smaller quantities to these end customers. Whereas before, people would order a season's worth of goods or a month's worth of goods. They're moving to a weekly or bi-weekly delivery so that they don't get stuck holding inventory and marking it down. And the companies that realize that and move towards that type of manufacturing flexibility are the ones that are going to be able to capitalize on this and to really, really benefit from an open global environment. And the three things that, if you're going to take anything from this presentation, are planning, preparation, and execution are the three keys for successful supply chain management. Thank you.
Our fourth presenter this afternoon is Brian August, and the title of his presentation is Aligning the Supply Chain to Anticipate Developing Market Trends. Brian is a business consultant with the Kenan Institute of Asia, a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to helping the small and medium-sized enterprises to be more competitive in the global marketplace. Brian's background is in supply chain management, procurement, finance, and law. He has an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University and a law degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Brian?
Thank you. First, I just want to say that Kenan Institute is based in Bangkok, Thailand, where we operate our offices out of the Asia Institute. And in Thailand, the more important a presentation or a person, the colder they keep the room, which means that this is indeed a very important session, and we're all very important speakers. So keep that in mind as you shiver through this. So setting up today's presentation, what I want to go through very briefly is setting goals for your organization, business planning and strategy for your organization, the role of supply chain management, and then just again a brief description of what we're trying to do in Thailand's textile and garment industries, which are trying to change in the same way that Egypt is and moving from a commodity producer to a more value-added producer. So first I want to talk about the importance of setting organizational goals. If this doesn't seem like it fits with supply chain management, please just bear with me because you will see where I'm going with this. Can't stress enough the importance of setting organizational goals. They provide direction for your company, planning, strategy, and activities. It allows for anticipation and response to changes in the market, the technology used, and customer demands. It, in a sense, creates a roadmap for your organization, just like you wouldn't take a trip to a new place, a new city, without looking at where you're going, the directions, the maps. So too for your organization, as you move forward in time, you need to plan where you're going and understand what you need to get there. So for most organizations, what they're trying to do is meet or exceed customer expectations because that's how they survive. They make money, they create wealth. So to do that, of course, they have to understand what are the customer expectations. And as we all know, customer expectations are getting more and more demanding. We want a higher quality product. We want to pay the absolute lowest price for this product too. The delivery has to be very flexible when we want it, in the quantity we want it. And sometimes the image of what they're getting is important. All things that we have to keep in mind. So some examples of companies that have reached out, found out what the customer expectations are, and then either met them or exceeded them. Take an example from the automobile industry. Toyota Motors pretty much set the standard for quality using supply chain management techniques, total quality management, just-in-time, continuous improvement, are all things that have helped them be seen as a quality producer in the eyes of the customer. Price in the United States and now more internationally, Walmart has done a great job of managing their supply chain to bring a lower price. Dell Computers, in terms of the delivery, a completely personally configured computer in 1 week to you, where before months is what we had to wait for a computer, or we had to take one off the shelf. And then, of course, image. Mercedes-Benz has done an excellent job, as some of the other companies, such as BMW and Porsche, have sold themselves or present themselves as something that can enhance people's image. So to do this, the first step is to create a business plan for your organization. A strategy. How are you going to meet your customers' expectations? You have to know where you're going. And, more importantly, all the functions. And when I say functions, I'm talking about finance, I'm talking about marketing, I'm talking about production, operation, sales. They all have to know where the company is going so they can work together to get the company there. And then we finally come to supply chain management, which is then how we incorporate the planning. How do we execute what we plan to do? And as I say here, it has to be integrated into the company planning process from the very early stages. If you are not planning how you're going to use or deliver your product or your supply chain, then you're just reacting. You're not truly planning or managing your supply chain. So what is supply chain management? Why should we focus on it? And that last one says, what is the process of supply chain management? There are a lot of definitions of supply chain management. I'm not going to read them for you, but the simplest way to say it is, it's how you provide your product to your customer. How do you get something your customer wants to them? That's what supply chain management is. You can get much more complex, but it still boils down to that fact. So why should a company focus on supply chain management? Why so much emphasis? Why are we hearing so much about it? Well, one of the biggest reasons is information. Customers have incredible access through the internet, through telephone, through directories to information about all kinds of things. Your costs, quality levels, other suppliers or competitors to you. And of course, as we said before, the customers are getting much more demanding. But most importantly, we can realize substantial savings in both time and cost by effectively implementing a supply chain strategy. Now, one of the barriers to this is something I mentioned before. All the functional areas in an organization must work towards a common goal. The problem we run into is that in traditional organizations, we have what we call silos. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, in the United States and in other countries, after we've grown wheat or corn or other goods, we'll store them in these very large vertical buildings we call silos. Generally, if the silos are full, you can't see through them, you can't go through them, you have to go around them. They've got very high walls. Similarly, sometimes in an organization, between our different groups, we have extremely high walls. One group does not talk to another group. So here I've listed some out: accounting and finance, purchasing, manufacturing, production. If these groups are not talking to each other, it's going to be very difficult to meet your customers' expectations, to execute your business plan. Let me give you an example of a company that wasn't really communicating about it across the functional areas. Volvo Cars, back in the 1980s, was having a very big problem. The sales and marketing group were having a big problem. Green Volvos were just not selling at all. So they realized this and they put into place a promotion. We are going to push green Volvos. We want people to take green Volvos. And it was incredible. They were flying off the dealer showroom. They were very successful. There was one problem with this. They forgot to tell production that this is what they were doing and why they were doing it. So production, the only thing they saw was that, hey, look at all these green Volvos that are selling, we better make more. What happened is Volvo ended up with a large supply of green Volvos that really people didn't want. So that's an example of where one functional area operates in its own silo can have a tremendous impact on the company as a whole. Now, in terms of implementing supply chain management, there's a couple of things that need to happen. There's essentially 3 stages. There's planning, preparation, and execution. So the planning stage looks out about 1 to 10 years.